Hi there, hope you're doing well, and welcome to a unique episode where, for the first time, I'm going to share some of my struggles and see how our teaching applies to me and how I deploy it and when I don't, etc. So, I'm going to get a bit more personal, talk about, again, my own struggles and see again how our teachings actually are universal. And I hope you'll find a lot of value in this. I asked, this was probably more than half a year ago, like if anyone was interested, and one person said yes. It was Kyle said yes. I would like to hear this, Daniel. So, as promised, here we are. So again, we're going to look at how everything we teach here applies to myself and I believe all humans. And of course, I want to say that I am very, very well aware that so many in our community are going through or have gone through a struggle that is much more intense and scary than the one I'm going through. But so I want to be mindful of that. But at the same time, the elements are so similar. I think it's really the human experience. So I'm going to share some examples from the perspective of myself as a content creator and entrepreneur. And my struggle, if you will, is, as many of you know, I got fired from my job about 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, actually. And since then I've been trying to pivot to a sleep coach, content creator, entrepreneur. And as anybody out there with a small business knows, it is scary. It is quite an anxiety provoking experience to you know uh, start something completely like from scratch, and hoping that you can sustain to provide for your family, etc., by what you do. So with that in mind, I picked out five like teaching points that I thought we could look at. And I want to start where this actually where the similarity between what I was teaching on this YouTube channel, uh, what was striking, like it kind of made me reflect upon what I'm doing. It was really when it comes to this timeless way and what I hear called the numberless way. So as many of you know, I often say that what can be really helpful is to not know what time it is, not check the clock. It's an invitation to let go of like an attempt to have control over something we don't have any control over. And this was probably back 2.5 years ago, even something like that. I was saying this very, very often. And then at some point, it dawned upon me that I was doing exactly this. I was very frequently checking like how many subscribers are there, how many new subscribers, how many views, how many and I was like, I'm doing exactly the same that I'm asking, people who have trouble sleeping not to do. And it just struck me that, okay, it's the same thing. And I really believe it is, because like checking numbers in this case, which is things like subscribers and views and watch hours and new clients and revenue and all these things, it can give the brain a sense of control. But in reality, like it's like there's nothing I can do to control this whatsoever. Like I have no control over these things. So that sense of control it's a total it's an illusion that there is any type of control over these things, which can so easily create a struggle. And the way it can create struggle is that if you're a content creator, let's say, and you're like, oh my gosh, like my views this today were like super low, it creates like anxiety, because you think that you're under some kind of threat and something dangerous, something scary is happening. You have to do something, right? And on the flip side, if you're like, oh, the views are really high, then that can give you a temporary kind of like it can be exciting temporarily. You feel like a boost of like happiness. But then shortly after, like, okay, how do I repeat this? How do I do it again? It's the same thing with sleep, right? If we see like, oh, I slept very little, it creates performance anxiety because we're scared and we want to sleep more. If we see that we track our sleep and we slept a lot, we get excited for a second, but then we're also in performance anxiety because we want to do it again. So it really struck me quite early on that this was like the same thing. So knowing that, of course, I also saw that like the numberless way, like tracking less, um, uh, you know, it leads to much more peace. So I know this. I know that the numberless way, it can be really helpful. And by and large, I think I am, with time, checking numbers less, and I'm reacting less. True, but I still check numbers quite often. So and I'm just sharing this because it's like, again, it's so human. And very closely related to this, like timeless way or numberless way, is a teaching we have where we talk about thresholds or acceptability thresholds. For example, it can be something like this: if I don't sleep much one night, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But 2 nights in a row, that is not okay. That's the threshold, which is so natural to create for ourselves because it gives us, again, some sense of safety, but it actually creates more pressure because, like, there's nothing we can control there, right? And it's same thing with yeah, I've seen that so many times in my own mind. These thresholds being created, something like, for example, like, oh, if we don't have a new client today, that's okay. But if we go 2 days without any new clients, that's not okay. Or that means something. That's like creating these thresholds. I've seen that happen so many times in my own mind, and just, again, so similar to what happens when we struggle with insomnia. And also very close to this teaching is meaning. That, when it comes to sleep and trouble sleeping, it's actually often we how we feel after we slept little, for example, has more to do very often than, the exact numbers we slept. It's often an internal narrative, like, oh, I slept very little, this means something is wrong with me, I'm never going to get better, like things are hopeless. That narrative, the meaning we ascribe to what happened, it really determines what we feel. And similarly, if we go back to like the threshold of, like, um no new clients sign up for 2 days or something like that, that circumstance itself has no particular meaning. It's just like coincidental, right? But my brain still creates stories of what numbers or messages, or comments or things like that mean. Like if there's like a negative comment here on the YouTube channel, I might be like, oh, I'm off track. I'm not connecting with people. I'm never gonna, you know, I can't find my, find something helpful. I'm not going to come up with something new to teach on, or things like that. Those narratives come up very often, even though, like, I know this. I know it's just narratives. I know it's just a storyline, but that doesn't prevent it from happening here and there. And now, like, I'm talking a lot about the kind of the anxiety part of it, but the flip side too. Sometimes there is like things are, um, there's a wave of new subscribers, something like that, and the story becomes, oh, this is fantastic. Like, uh, yeah, this is like a breakthrough moment or something like that. That narrative happens too. But again, it's like there is no meaning. Like, so this was a teaching point about meaning, that in the narrative determines how we feel, but in reality, so much more helpful when we see that it- we can't see it. There is no real meaning. It's just like a lot of this is just like circumstances, catastrophizing. We kind of already sort of touched upon that, but last week I had a real real moment of panic, which I want to share with everyone. Which was, um, we had, or I had reduced, the price point of our app BedTyme on the App Store and on Google Play, and then my wife told me that, oh, this person got charged a higher rate after this was changed. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I actually told my wife, oh my gosh, we have to tell all our clients that there's a problem. We have to alert everyone. And I got my laptop and I was going to do something. I don't even know what I was going to do, but I was totally panicking. And like, even just like the next day, I realized that, or we realized that there was actually no issue at all. It was just like Android had a little different way of reducing points than I understood. But my point here is that with all the work I do every day, teaching on kind of like heart work and how it can relate to our emotions, this and that way, and the peaceful way, I panic. I panic very often, actually. And the last point here, number 5, is about constantly seeking reassurance. A lot of something I commonly hear is somebody saying like, "Hey, Daniel, like I'm literally like binging on success stories here," and sometimes that's from somebody who's just like, you know, they're glad they found this, our channel here, and or finding kind of that hope and inspiration that they hadn't found before. Or it can be somebody who's like almost like, feeling like I'm doing this too much. I'm totally like overdoing this. I know I should stop it. I can't help myself. I'm seeking that reassurance. There's a little bit of effort, like an attempt to escape fear, maybe baked into that too. But this is another part where I saw like I do the exact same thing. I do the exact same thing, even though I know that messages will always be the same. And what am I talking about here? Me binging on success stories. Well, that's why if you look at my backdrop, it looks a little different than it usually does. But what I've done over the past many years is looking at success stories from various sources and trying to learn from them. So as you can see behind me, there's a bunch of books, and this is not even all of them. This is just some of them. But the people like, okay, this is Ray Kroc, McDonald's, Hewlett and Packard, like Nike, what else? Netflix, Starbucks. My latest book that I've started reading like literally today is about like Trader Joe. So those are kind of like entrepreneurial people. And I also read about artists like let's say the Beatles or the Grateful Dead or athletes like Wayne Gretzky. Like I read these all the time to see like, okay, what helped them, what got these people to arrive where they went. And the message is always the same. The message is always one of like, finding something that you really love, you care about, you're passionate about it, something you do just even if nobody in the world like uh if you didn't get paid for it, you would just do it for the love of it. Keep doing that and everything else will follow. That's kind of the message that is in every single story. But you just sometimes you just want to hear it over and over and over again. So I just want to share that. That's another one that I find a lot of similarities with you know with our community here. So uh, to finish off here, I'd say like, okay, if is there a teaching, you might wonder like, okay, so is there a teaching point here? Daniel, like apart from sharing how like the human mind kind of works very similarly regardless of what situation we're in, like what's the teaching point here? Well, I think it is this one, that we're all human. We're all human. And although I very much recognize how I behave, think, act in a way that often creates more struggle for myself, then what I don't do is, generally speaking, sometimes I do that too, but generally speaking, I think I don't criticize myself so much for it. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this, and that's a human thing, and that's okay. And I think there's always that invitation for self-kindness. And the times when I struggle a lot is, I think it's just the same. It's just sometimes I'm very hard on myself. Sometimes I'm like, Daniel, like, you haven't achieved anything, like this is never going to work, like et cetera, which is just lack of self-kindness. So again, the teaching point here, I think, is we're all human, and we often have this invitation to be kind to ourselves. And when we do, then really there is no struggle. Everything just gets just easier. So yeah, let me know what you thought. A very, very different episode this time, but it's something I've been meaning to do for a long time. So I didn't, the thing was, I didn't have anything for Heard Online really. So I thought I might just talk about this. But I'll conclude there. Let me know what you thought in the comment section. As always, look forward to having you here tomorrow for a live Q&A and for many more episodes going forward. But that's it for today. Bye for now.